Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. In the first story, we tell you what it's like to live with an old witch in the same house. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Grandmother tries to steal my rings. Okay, first some context before I get into the story. I live with two of my family members. Both are extremely entitled, lazy, and my grandmother is a choosing beggar. She thinks she's entitled to steal my stuff whenever she wants something, and there's always an argument. I usually win the arguments, and if I don't, I just take my stuff back when she isn't here. And there's another argument, and I win a second argument because she apparently hates being stressed out, but causes stress. There's really not much to say about this, but last night I got a Captain Marvel thermos, only $5, and it's effing good. My grandmother comes home and started asking about it, and I told her how good it was and that it was pretty cheap considering how good the quality was. Then she asked where hers was. Confused, I asked what she meant. Well, why the hell would you buy yourself one but not buy one for me? You know I've been needing one. It was almost 1 in the morning, and here's this grown-A old woman throwing a tantrum because I didn't get her merch of something she doesn't like. She hates Marvel movies, and has called Captain Marvel a effing disgusting lesbo at some point. I told her, you never said anything about needing one, and you don't even like Marvel. She then proceeds to whine, like nasal voice whining, which her voice doesn't even sound nasally when she talks normally. She only does it when she's whining. And demands I give her mine for her to keep at work. I said no. And there was an argument. Then she woke my mother up, and we had a family meeting about it. Eventually, she gave up. I showed her the quote on it, which said, "I'm not bossy, I'm the boss." And on the other side of it, it said Captain Marvel, and it was like a reddish-pink color, which she doesn't even like. Then she noticed I was wearing my rings, which were both pretty expensive, $45 each. One was onyx, I think, with a copper band, and also had gold and what looks like diamonds on it. If they were diamonds, it would have been a lot more expensive, but I think it's a gemstone similar. The other one has a gold band, the same diamond-like gemstones, and a white gemstone with black veins. Now the gemstones are both kind of big and have the gold and diamond-like gemstones around them, but what the rings look like doesn't really matter. She demanded that I hand over my rings because she deserves something expensive after the stress I've caused her. The rings are special to me because of where I got them. I instinctively put my hands behind my back and refuse. My mother's trying her best to help the situation, and another argument happens. At 2 in the morning, she still won't give up. Today I woke up to find them missing and on the kitchen table. I took them back and hid them in a bag with the rest of my gemstones. I hide the bag on my bookshelf, tucked in carefully behind my books, and whenever I go out, I take it with me. It's a small velvet bag, so it's easy to take around. Most of the time when I'm out, though, my grandma's at work, but I still always keep it with me. I feel you, OP. Never give up, even if she has some mental problems. Most important thing is to keep a cool head and not give in to the pressure from her side. And our second story. Abused by a coworker, and bosses tell me to take it or get fired. I recently had left a job that made me move across the country for work before being told I was only needed for one job before getting a severe pay cut. I was running low on cash, and rent in the city I was in is super high. I'd constantly scour Facebook, LinkedIn, and a bunch of different job sites to find at least something that was in my skill set, which was very specific and is hard to find anyone with a decent amount of experience. Finally found a job at a company, which this story is about. They brought me back to make an extension to a specific software they were making. All right, fair enough. Now that I look back, there were a few red flags regarding the company. They were a startup with no HR. This is important later, which is always trouble when you have a bunch of programmers since they're book smart, but usually make charisma, wisdom a dump stat. The other issue is that I never got to meet anyone outside of the CTO of the company. Lastly, the CEO and COO of the company both stated that you need to have a thick skin to be a part of the team. I foolishly thought this meant that I needed to be able to take constructive criticism. Oh, how wrong I was. First 2 weeks went fine. Our team worked fully remote, so voice chat was usually kept to a minimum. For this next part, the role of a-hole will be taken by Greg. Not real name. Greg was a senior on the main project I was working with and was without a doubt one of the best programmers I've ever met. Apparently he was known for getting into fights, being openly insubordinate, and would constantly bash other coworkers for their crap work. Although his work was always great, the amount of crap he would spew on everyone and everything caused an almost immediate grinding against my normally somewhat passive attitude. Usually I was able to ignore him and just focus on my own stuff, but after 2 weeks, I had to work with him constantly for a critical piece of the project. The abuse from this guy started almost immediately. He would complain about my code, would call me and my other team members incompetent, as well as constantly complain about the direction of the company. This continued for 3 months nonstop. Eventually, this came to a head when I eventually had to rope in the CEO and COO for an emergency meeting to try and get him to stop after a particularly bad chewing out for my UX design on a part of the extension. That sent my blood pressure and stress through the roof and left me useless for the rest of the day. I had collected statements from other team members, screenshot messages, and even recorded some conversation where he was especially severe in his verbal abuse. To my surprise, both the CEO and COO already had complaints against him. They relented and told me that they know his attitude is horrendous and that what he was doing was unacceptable. Here's how the next part of the conversation went down. CEO: "We know Greg has been acting inappropriately ever since he started with us, but his code is what keeps this company going. What would you do in my position?" Me: "I'd let him go. He's constantly causing issues with the team and making everyone frustrated. It makes things very hard to get done." "I understand that, but unfortunately we aren't in a position to always hire nice people. There's a difference between being not nice and bullying people. If I have to decide whether to hire a smart person or a nice person, I have to choose the smart person." He made his position loud and clear. If I wasn't going to roll over to Greg, then I'd have to find a new job. I had no HR to go to, and so there was nothing I could feasibly do to report either the CEO or Greg for this. After that, my work ethic plummeted. I said to myself that if they wouldn't care about me, then I wouldn't care about them. I clocked in at 10 and clocked out at 4. I took long lunches. Some days I just straight up didn't work and watched YouTube or played games. I was still going to make them what they asked because I still have professional development to think about, but I was no longer going to put in more than I had to. The icing on the cake was extending the deadline of my project by 2 months, extending my employment. I got laid off due to the recession, but it was clear that they didn't like that I couldn't be pushed around anymore. I want to make an important note here to all new bosses or people with hiring power. If someone is an a-hole on your team, they'll bring down the rest of the team. No matter how good they are, they can't offset the drag they cause to the team. And our next story. Mother thinks she's invincible because of her kids' career paths. My siblings and I have what would be any immigrant family's dream careers. My sister's a nurse, my brother's a deputy, and I'm on the path to becoming a lawyer. My parents are very proud, but my mom takes it a little too far. While growing up, my mom was a humble and agreeable person bordering on pushover when it came to work and community volunteering. Now she boasts about how she can do whatever she wants with few concerns because most things can be handled by her kids. It recently came to my attention that she has been getting into fights with people and threatening to sue them, saying her kid's a lawyer. She never does this in front of me because from the sound of it, she's always in the wrong, and she very much knows I wouldn't defend her on the spot, yet alone in court. When expressing this to my siblings, they told me that she's been reckless in similar ways with things revolving around their profession too. She would threaten to have someone arrested, ignore her doctor's instructions, and more. We're very grateful for both our parents, and while we would bend over backwards for our mom if she did deliver on her threats or if she got into trouble, she's 100% abusing her power through nepotism. The incident that brought all this to my attention was the following. She caused a scene at a telecommunications company store after having been on the phone with said company about an overcharge on her internet and TV bill. She didn't like the fact that she was kept on hold to reach a representative, so she hung up and went to the store, only to be told they're only retail and finding out about billing had to be done online or over the phone because of privacy concerns. She did not like this, so she threatened to have a retail worker arrested and said that she would sue the company, citing her kids are an officer and a lawyer. Said scene continued until she was escorted out by security. I learned about this when she asked me if I can pull some law documents to have her unbanned from the mall. I asked around to get the full story. My siblings and I expressed our concerns during dinner one night, and she started to raise her voice, saying that she had to go through a lot of hardship to raise us, and she deserves to live a comfortable life and enjoy the fruits of her labor. Me, being the outspoken liberal arts graduate, told her we're not vegetables grown in a field that she can do whatever with now that we're grown up, and she's giving us all trouble and grief when it can be completely avoided. She, of course, got mad and called me ungrateful, turning to my siblings to get them to side with her. Realizing she had no one backing her, she dismissed dinner talks, but nothing has changed since then. I'm still hearing about these scenes Mom's causing as my dad has realized what she's doing is wrong and reporting back to me. I suppose in the hopes that I would deal with it. However, I feel that I've done all I can. If she doesn't value what my siblings and I say, what can be done but to wait for her to make a mistake and learn from it? Wow, does your mom realize she could get her children in huge trouble at work? Possibly even fired? And our last story. Treat me like crap and I'll have a hand in your downfall. Story goes back a few years. I worked part-time in a small shop in the UK. Shop was in a chain of 4 or 5, all owned by a lovely lady who lived out of the area. The manager, however, was a misogynistic a-hole. He was a Walter Mitty type, claimed he was SAS and licensed to carry a gun. All rather amusing, given he was probably 9 stone wet through and wore glasses so thick he couldn't hit a barn door with a banjo. At first he was okay. He did his thing, I did mine. A few months in, he started to get especially nasty to me in front of customers, rude, sullen, to the point where a few customers pulled him up on it. After this, he took to hiding away in the stockroom upstairs and actually sleeping. Because during this, he didn't want me to have any comfort. He took away the chair from behind the counter before he left for his nap so I couldn't sit down, despite the shop being really quiet most of the time. Little things like this wore me down until one afternoon he appeared from his sleep and belittled me in front of a customer. I grabbed my coat from behind the counter and to his utter shock at a mere woman having the nerve, I walked out. The revenge part was easy. When I got home, I called lovely owner. I told her everything. She thanked me and said she'd be in touch. A few days later, she visited the store and took away all the CCTV videos for the month. At this point, I imagine boss was panicking because he suddenly realized the CCTV covered the upstairs warehouse. Owner called me and confirmed she'd seen him sleeping every day, apologized, and offered me a part-time job in one of her other stores. I politely declined as the distance was a little far for me. Walking past the store the following month, I noticed a sign in the window, closing down sale. She'd given the boss notice and closed the store. I know it was ticking over profit-wise, but it looks like that was the final straw. And with that, the a-hole boss returned to wherever he'd come from. A little Facebook stalking revealed his wife left him not long after. She had a lucky escape. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.